This video is on dilations. It's the last transformation we'll be doing in this unit individually anyways. There will be some compound transformations coming up, but this is the last individual one we'll be going through. It's probably one of the easier ones that we will have to complete. To dilate a point, you're going to multiply both the x and the y values by whatever the scale factor is. So if your scale factor is 2, you're going to multiply the x and the y by 2. If your scale factor is -3, you're going to multiply it by -3, both the x and the y values. This will give you the new coordinates for your image. So we're going to do a couple examples. Again, don't overthink it. It's not anything super complicated. So dilating means expanding or contracting, just like the pupils of your eyes do, the little black part. It expands and contracts with different light. So we're going to start with point A, which is at 1, 2. We want to dilate A, 1, 2, by a factor of 3. So we're going to start by graphing the point 1, 2, and labeling it A. And now before we do anything else, we want to go ahead and multiply both of these by 3. So 1 times 3 gives us 3. 2 times 3 gives us 6. So we already know that A prime is going to be at 3, 6. So 1 goes to 3, 2 goes to 6, because we were multiplying by our scale factor here, which was 3. Then all we have to do is go ahead and graph this new point at 3, 6, right up here. And again, make sure you're labeling it A prime. Okay, we're going to do a couple more examples. If we want to dilate point B, which is at -3, +2, you start by graphing the original. So we go to 3, +2, and we put a point right there. And now, before you have to do anything else, you're going to take and multiply both of these by our scale factor, which is 2. So -3 times 2 gives us -6, and 2 times 2 is going to give us a +4. So I know that B prime is going to be at -6, +4. Last thing you have to do is just go back and graph -6, +4. Make sure we're labeling it, of course, so that we know where A prime, B, and B prime are. I have them different colors here, but I've noticed that most of you are doing everything in the same color. If you don't label it, you will not know which point is which. Okay? The third example here is going to be a little bit different. You're given a point, which is C, -4, -6. And this notation, just like the other ones, this capital D means dilate. And this is our scale factor here, which is 1/2. Or if you want to use 0.5 instead, that's perfectly fine. If you're going to use a calculator, 0.5 and 1/2 are the same thing. So we start by graphing this, -4, -6, so backwards 4, down 6. And we're going to label that C, of course. And now we're going to multiply both our x and y values by 1/2. So 1/2 times -4 will give us a -2. 1/2 times -6 will give us a -3. So I know C prime is going to be at -2, -3. And the very last thing you have to do is go ahead and graph your image right here. So at -2, -3, we should have C prime. I'll give you 10 seconds to copy that down. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on. You're going to do this next example on your own. So to dilate a figure, just like everything else, you want to perform the same dilation to all of the points in that figure. So I'm going to give you a triangle XYZ. We'll graph it together, and then I want you to dilate it down here with a factor of 1/2. So just like that last point we did, your scale factor here is going to be 1/2. So x is going to be at +2, +2, right here. Y is going to be at 4, 6. So positive 4, positive 6 right up here. And Z is going to be the reverse of that. It's going to be at positive 6, positive 4. Positive 6, positive 4 right up here. And of course we're going to label it. And then we're going to go ahead and connect those. Now, when you're doing this, just like with all of the other transformations we've done, some of them will overlap. That's okay. If they overlap, it's okay. So I'll give you about 10 seconds to go ahead and give this a try on your own before we work it out together. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we want to take that factor of 1/2 and we want to multiply our x and our y by it. So 1/2 times 2 is going to be a 1. 1/2 times 2 for the y here is also going to be a 1. So x prime is going to be at 1, 1. So it should show up right around here. And you're going to make sure you label it so we can connect all of our points at the end and get our new triangle. 4, 6 is where y is. We want to multiply that by 1/2 and 1/2. So 1/2 of 4 gives us a 2. 1/2 of 6 gives us a 3. So y prime is at 2, 3. So we'll go out 2, up 3, and we will graph that right here. And the last one, z, is at 6, 4. It was the reverse of this one, so the image should probably be the reverse of this, but we'll check just in case. 1/2 of 6 gives us a 3. 1/2 of 4 gives us a 2. So z prime should be at 3, 2. So we'll go ahead and graph 3, 2, which is right here. Make sure we label it, and you can connect them right up. So you'll notice that this triangle up here has the exact same shape as this one down here. The only difference is their size. Our scale factor was 1/2, so we cut it in half. So our little triangle here is half of our big triangle. And you can tell that all of the points have half of the size. So instead of being at 2, 2, we're at 1, 1. Instead of being at 4, 6, we're at 2, 3. Everything is cut in half. If we were dilating it with a bigger factor, like 2 or 3, this triangle here would have actually expanded out and gotten way bigger, but it would have went off of our graph. Okay, the one thing that you should also remember, and this is in your notes, you might want to write it down, is that if you dilate by a negative number, it'll actually flip it right across the origin and change the size of it. So if this was by a negative 1/2, this whole triangle would have flipped over and been somewhere like this. And I know these aren't fantastic lines. It's about as good as all of you do. This would have been our x prime. This would have been our y prime down here. And this would have been our z prime over here. Again, I know those aren't great, but that would be if this was by a negative 1/2. Okay, so if you need to correct that, go ahead. Definitely make a note about dilating by a negative number so that you're aware in case that happens to come up. And I will see you tomorrow.